Okay, I hereby call the regular Board of Education meeting this September 20th, 2022 to order at 7 p.m. Could you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And Mrs. Johnson, could you please take roll?
Friedland.
Here. Oh.
Martle.
Here.
Here.
And Ronstadt.
Here.
Okay, the consent agenda is presented. Does any board member wish to discuss or pull any agenda item at this time? You can discuss prior to pulling if it's just a question for clarification. All right, hearing none, I hereby entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented in its entirety.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Friedland, second by Fiorito.
I would just like to say congratulations to all of the teachers and staff members who have put in their intent to retire. So there we go. We love you all, and while you're not leaving us right away, it will be sad to see people go, but.
Thank you.
Fiorito.
Yes.
Johnson, yes. She's not here, so I say yes. Friedland.
Yes.
Martle.
Yes.
And Ronstadt.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, state the motion. Okay,
All right.
sorry.
Board communications is next. First up is board member appointment. Mrs. Pfister, could you please join me up front? Okay, I state your name.
I, Rebecca Pfister,
Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of River Trail School District 26
do solemnly swear that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Education of River Trail School District 26
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the state of Illinois to the best of my ability.
in accordance with the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and the laws of the State of Illinois to the best of my ability.
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets,
I further swear that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets,
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall encourage and respect the free expression of opinion by my fellow board members and others who seek a hearing before the board while respecting the privacy of students and employees.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by majority vote at a public board meeting.
I shall recognize that a board member has no legal authority as an individual and that decisions can be made only by a majority vote at a public board meeting.
And I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
And I shall abide by majority decisions of the board while retaining the right to seek changes in such decisions through ethical and constructive channels.
Congratulations. Welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Have a seat.
Because I almost wiped out my phone.
As far as for the board, board committee assignments, I talked with Mrs. Pfister, and she's going to take on Dr. Stolzer's old committee assignments. And Mr. Ronstedt has been nice enough to serve as our IASB delegate for this year's conference. So all our assignments are filled for the year. Okay, open agenda for board member communications. We did get a donation of a piano from Mary McDevitt, who is Emily Kruzel's mother for Indian Grove School. And Katie Van Eck, the music teacher, also sent her a very nice thank you card. So, but we also want to thank her for that generous donation. And then district recognition. We would like to, is anyone here from the Church Northwest Assembly of God? Okay. We want to thank them who they allowed us to use their parking lot for pickups and drop-offs while we were finishing the construction here on the parking lot, and they were fantastic partners and fantastic neighbors, so we want to thank them. And then that brings us to the River Trail School District Business Office.
Yeah, I want you to stand right there in front of the screen. There, I think would be good. Yeah, right there, so everybody can see you. So it's my pleasure to recognize a group of people that are extremely important to the district, but I think most of you may not know who they are or what they do. They are the gears that keep our district running and running smoothly. The last couple years have been very challenging, but these women have come through with flying colors. They've done a wonderful job for us. So I'm going to start with Jan, who is our newest employee. Jan, you want to come over here? So Jan has, she picked up on the payroll. She's only been with us for 3 months. When she came into the office, she knew nothing about payroll, but she is such a great learner and just loves learning that she picked it up extremely quickly. She learned all kinds of new things, classified and certified employees, account numbers, infinite visions, IMRF, TRS, summer payrolls, just everything there is to know about payroll. And then she was it was a very challenging time this summer because she had to get all of the employees on the new contract, adjust all of their pays, and then we had over 40 new people that she also had to get set up. And Jan, brand new to us, was able to do all of that extremely well. So, anyway. And I have to give everybody a hug. So. Thank you. And you can stay there because I think they'll take a picture too. All right, so I have Melissa Galvez next. She is also brand new. She's the human resource specialist. She's only been with us 9 months. Despite that, she has become extremely knowledgeable when it comes to human resources and benefits. She is extremely personable. She's a very good listener, and she really wants to make River Trail School District a better place to work. And she's working very hard at that. She, even in times when it's a crisis or there are terrible problems to solve, she's always calm and collected and working out the issues. She did that recently today, did a wonderful job at it. And she also had to onboard and get set up our over 40 new employees this summer. So that was extremely challenging and being brand new, but she's doing a fantastic job. Okay, and then we have our more experienced business office employees. Jane Holtz, she's kind of a jack of all trades. She's our office manager, receptionist. She does transportation, coordinator. She writes grants for us. She does just about any project I send her way. And despite all of those things that she's handling, she does it all with a confidence and with an ease. And I mean, when we lost our payroll specialist, she was our backup. She did payroll until Jan got up to speed. Any project that I will give her, she handles, and the next thing I know, it might be really complicated. Next thing I know, it's on my desk and she's done it. So Jane is another very efficient, wonderful employee that we have in the business office. Okay, and we have Tracy Hillman, who is our most experienced business office employee. She's actually been here longer than I have. So many of you may know Tracy, but I would say she was one of the most positive, sweet people that I know, always willing to help. She'll do anything for you. She's also the glue that holds our office together. Without her, I don't know what we would have done. So. Well, she handles accounts payable, which means she pays the invoices, she does all the purchase orders, she keeps track of all the grants, she deals with the 214 treasurer's office, Donna knows what that means. Accounting, audits, financial reports, pretty much anything else that I've asked her to do. So, and if any of you have ever come into the office and talked to Tracy or called her, you know that she will go out of her way to help you out. Doesn't matter what it is, how complicated, how frustrating, and she always does it with a smile. So I would I'd just like to say how grateful I am to have such a wonderful group of people to work with. It has just been, the last 16 years have flown by because of all of these women here that you see standing up here. So thank you.
And we're going to take a short 5-minute break. There's some desserts in the back. We'd like to take some pictures with your family so they don't have to stay all night. And so we'll take a 5-minute break. Okay, next on the agenda is the public hearing for the fiscal year 2023 budget. That is Dr. Schuster. You have the floor. Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion and a second to open the fiscal year 2023 public hearing for the budget.
Second.
Moved by Fiorito, second by Friedland.
Johnson, yes. Fiorito? Yes. Becky?
Yes.
Jessica, how do you say yours?
Mr.
Fister. Okay, thank you. Murphy?
Yes.
Ronstadt?
Yes.
Amaro?
Yes.
And Freeman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. The River Trail School District budget for fiscal year 2023. And how do I use this thing? Oh, turn it on. Aha. So River Trail School District responsibly uses the community taxpayer dollars to provide a high-quality education to the students in the district. The budget process is long and involved, and it takes most of the year. Our district first determines what the priorities are and aligns them to our strategic plan. All of our programs and our staffing are evaluated in a zero-based budgeting process. We've also been using grant writing in order to supplement our revenues and pay for some important programs. So, just as a little reminder, our strategic plan is head ready plus heart ready equals life ready students with a desire to learn, a respect for diversity, they take responsibility and thrive in a safe environment and with high expectations. Sorry, I'm not doing that very well. Okay. Our goals for this fiscal year are leadership and collaboration, data-driven decision-making, best practices in instruction, climate and culture, community outreach, and social emotional well-being for all. The budget is based on an enrollment of about 1,500 students. We're currently at 1,518. So our budgeting process, as we said, first we plan, we set our priorities, we evaluate our programs, and then we get to the stage of paying for those programs. So that is what the budget is. It's the way we pay for those programs. It covers staff salaries, staff benefits, supplies and materials for the students, books, technology, professional development to support our curriculum and instruction, the maintenance and upkeep of our facilities, and transportation for students to and from school. So keeping revenues and expenses aligned is key to a solid financial health. So this chart shows the net of revenues and expenses for the last 10 years. And we have been able to save some money, and this money is what we have been using for capital projects, or a portion of what we need for the capital projects. We saved money, and we were able to renovate Prairie Trail School with the help of some bonds. And we have continued to save some money, and that is what we're planning to use for our future infrastructure projects to renovate our other 3 schools. So this year, we are planning for a $600,000 surplus in our operating funds. Operating is education, operations and maintenance, transportation, IMRF, and Social Security. Those are our operating funds. So we are planning, we are $29.3 million in revenue, $28.7 million in expenses. And then we'll also be transferring $3.3 million to capital projects to help pay for those infrastructure improvements and our roofing replacements. So why do we keep a fund balance? Well, in our district, we get 85% of our revenues from property taxes. Property taxes come twice a year. And this year, what we were supposed to get in August, we're not getting till December or January. and we still have to pay our salaries and buy the supplies and upkeep our facilities even with that. Often the state has not provided the full amount of their grants, or they have been very late in paying those grants too. And the state also requires that if we want to have financial recognition, that we have 180 days cash on hand, which is about a 50% fund balance. We have been recognized, gotten financial recognition for many years, as this chart shows. And then the fund balance also impacts our credit rating. Well, sorry, I didn't realize it was all coming on there. Aim it at that, or aim it at your computer? That computer. Okay. All right. Okay. So we have, over the last few years, applied and received many grants. It's close to $8 million worth of grants over the last few years. And that's above and beyond our normal state and federal funding. We did get about $3 million for our summer emergency feeding program during COVID, when we were giving out 7 days worth of lunch and breakfast every week. For the COVID stimulus funding, we got about $1.7 million. Then we got a school maintenance grant for $50,000. We will be applying for another $50,000. We also got $2 million to fund our Prairie Trail School. We are hoping, we got $1.2 million so far. We're hoping to get the other $800,000. FEMA gave us some money. Bosch has been a wonderful community partner, and we have received around $50,000 a year for many years now from them. We recently received a Department of Justice security grant for about $500,000. And this parking lot out here, we had a partnership with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, and we will be getting $650,000 for that. Okay, so revenues, as I said, actually this year our revenues, about 86% of them come from property taxes. And we can only increase our property tax amount by the CPI, and it's actually the CPI from 2 years ago, which was 1.4%. So this budget is based on an increase in taxes of 1.4%. And we're also assuming that we'll have flat funding for our state and federal grants. Flat funding on the base, not all those extra ones that I told you about. Oh. Okay, on the expenditure end, close to 80% goes to our staff in salaries and benefits. That's our biggest expenditure. So some of those expenditures for the staff involve some of the changes for this year. There were enrollment increases. We had to fill a number of vacant positions, thus all those over 40 positions that Melissa and Jan took care of. We wanted to make sure that we caught our students up academically and socially, emotionally from COVID. So we added interventionists at Prairie Trails and the middle school. There is some funding from the federal government for that. And then we also added some resources for social emotional needs and multilingual needs. We added an additional self-contained class at Euclid. And we brought our food service in-house, and I'm only hearing positive things about that. At the middle school, this is the third year for our science program. We are still doing some investing there. We also updated our materials for our accelerated English language program and for music. At the elementary schools, we decided to continue studying our math program this year, so we renewed the old program and are doing more math pilots. We got some money from ESSER, which are used for phonics and decodable texts. Then we're also adding resources to our classroom libraries, to our accelerated reading materials, and to our STEM resources. And there was one behind him. Okay, professional development is extremely important. This year, the focus is on equity, collaborative communities, student-centered coaching, assessment, differentiation, inclusive curriculum, reading, and math. And then our district has always been very innovative when it comes to technology. We are continuing to do that. We have a number of e-learning tools that we are continuing to subscribe to and to provide professional development for. All of our kindergarten through 8th graders take home a Chromebook. And at 1st and 5th grade, they get a brand new Chromebook. We get our high-speed internet from Illinois Century, and it costs us nothing, which is very good. But we have been investing in cybersecurity, protecting our students' privacy, and a new notification system. Okay. So you will, if you stay for the whole meeting, you will hear a lot about capital projects tonight. In this particular budget, there are $6 million for capital projects, $6 million of expenditures. First, there's the middle school permeable paving and rain garden project, which was, we got a grant, or it's a partnership of $650,000 from the Metropolitan Water District. We also refunded some bonds, and that was $1 million. So that paid for most of that project. Right now we are in the design stage for infrastructure projects at our other schools. And those construction is planned to begin in the summer of 2023. We also have on the revenue side some planned revenues to cover that, about $6 million that we've saved in our operating funds to transfer to capital projects. We got $0.8 million from the ESSER 3 grant. We are getting about $0.8 million of property tax rebates every year. And then we're in the midst of a sale for Nipper School. We are also planning to issue $20 million of bonds in 2024 and 2025, which are not in this budget. Right now, that's for the elementary schools. Right now, we are planning for a possible referendum to fund future infrastructure projects at the middle school. So every time I do a budget, I also look out 5 years to make sure that we're going to still be in good financial health. And even with these major capital projects, we still will be in the targets for our fund balance that says that the board has set. I think that's it. Questions? This is a public hearing, so the public can answer questions.
You're welcome to ask your questions
ask
without turning
questions.
in a card. This is a public forum or public hearing. Okay, having none, I will entertain a motion in a second to adjourn the public hearing on the fiscal year 2023 budget. Moved by Grimpy,
Second.
second by Friedland.
Okay, Camardo,
Yes.
Diego,
Yes.
Ronstadt,
Yes.
I vote yes. Friedland?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
And Griffey.
Yes.
So motion carried, and we're out of closed session, public hearing at,
7:32.
thank you.
Okay, that brings us to RTEA comments. Good to see you, Bob.
Thank you. It's unfortunate I had to miss the last two meetings. I was ill and out of town, but
We felt the same way.
Well, I'd like to thank the board as always for the wonderful rapport that we share with each other. I'd also like to offer my congratulations to Mrs. Pfisterer and welcome. And I'm sure you'll be a wonderful addition to this wonderful board. I know that being a board member is a difficult job. It's a thankless job. You put in a lot of time and effort. You're not paid. And you have difficult decisions that weigh down on you that you have to consider carefully. You have to take into account your fiduciary responsibilities as well as looking at doing right by the students and your staff. I know that you'll do this, as you always do, with care and attention to detail. Thank you so much for all the work you do.
Thank you. Okay, visitors' comments. At this time, I'd like to recognize any members of the audience to approach the board with their comment or question by completing a visitor comment card. Please do note that the board and administration typically do not respond, and if you are wishing for a response, please provide your name and number or email for a member of the board or administration to get back to you. There is a second opportunity for visitors' comments later on in the meeting. Speakers are encouraged to limit their time for others to participate, a 5-minute time limit per speaker, with 20-minute minimum length on one topic and an overall 30-minute minimum for visitor comments. After that time, the board can move all further comments to the second session or continue comments and establish an ending time per our policy. Would anyone like to make a comment? Okay, hearing none, this moves us to new business services. We will approve the fiscal year 2023 budget. This is an action item. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the fiscal year 2023 budget total expenditures for all funds, $43,006,797, and revenue for all funds are $39,047,870. Moved by Grimpy,
Second.
does anybody have any questions?
I just want to clarify, the levy we're talking about is 1.4%.
Yes, it's the 2021 levy based on the 2020 CPI.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mrs. Johnson, can you call roll?
Ronstadt?
Yes.
Greenland?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
Fiorito?
Yes.
Camardo?
Yes.
Pfister?
Yes.
And Johnson, yes. Motion carries.
Okay, student enrollment update, Dr. Schuster, that is you.
Okay. Okay, the enrollment for this year, we had planned on 1,497 students. We're actually at 1,518. Our kindergarten is lower than we had anticipated, based on, we were going off of Coffrin's latest projection, which was done a year or so ago. He is updating that now. So it's 120 students. We were looking at 146. But the other schools, the enrollment went up. We were up 21 at Euclid, 15 at Indian Grove, and 14 at the middle school. They're spread over all the grades, so it didn't impact our class sizes very much based on them.
Okay, next is for new business is the support staff position.
Okay, well, you heard today how wonderful the staff is in the business office and how new it is with our new human resource and payroll specialists. We are also losing 2 more key business office members because of retirement in January and then in June. And that leaves only 1 employee that has really any experience in the department, and both she and I will be gone at the end of 2024. So we are recommending, there are some other reasons too, we're recommending that we add 1 full-time ESP in the business office. This person would be primarily doing human resources to start off with. The state has increased the amount of online data reporting and collection that we have to do. They keep adding on more and more. We also need to get caught up in the data in human resources. We have added a lot of people over the last few years, and there's just some data ends that need to be straightened out and caught up there. We also want to work on a long-term staffing plan for the pending retirements. We need to do some more cross-training. Jane will be retiring, and we need somebody as a backup for the payroll. That's the biggest area that we need backup in. But all areas, we need to do some cross-training. And as we're looking at Tracy and I leaving, we also are thinking about some possible restructuring within the business office. And so this would give us, if we hire this person now, this would give us some time to think about that restructuring and figure out how we might want the office to look going forward. The salary range I'm recommending is $45,000 to $55,000, and I did add that to the FY23 budget.
Anybody have any questions?
I think it's a great idea. I think that as we have some people here that we recognize they have great value, and the fact that some, over the course of time, are going to be leaving, the fact that you got a game plan to start transitioning some of the work and getting these people set up. So you've really done a great job with succession planning, which a lot of places don't do, and so I applaud you for this action.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Great comment.
And I just want to say about the temporary positions never actually being temporary. We end up paying more for any type of consulting or hiring, someone
Yes.
from a, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the name, from the companies that just provide workers for short periods of time, staffing firms. Yeah, so, I agree that it would be better to have somebody who has full knowledge of our systems and operations that is not going to be leaving us anytime soon.
Anybody else? Okay, can I get a motion and a second to approve the business office support staff position with a salary range of $45,000 to $55,000 a year with the intention to reevaluate the position at the end of the 2022-2023 school year?
So moved.
Moved by Fiorito,
Second.
second by Johnson.
You ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I vote yes. Grimpy,
Yes.
Pfisterer,
Yes.
Ronstadt,
Yes.
Friedland,
Yes.
Fiorito,
Yes.
Camardo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, committee reports. The first up is the Operations Committee. Mr. Fiorito, you are the chair.
Okay, last week we had a very spirited meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Lyndall, and I hope everybody had a chance to take a look at her presentation before you came here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I am going to invite my whole team up here to do the up there to do the presentation with me. We have Ron Richardson, Dan Whistler, Jeff Oakes, Dave Torres. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Dave Torres, and myself. So we will do a combined presentation. Okay, I'll just start with the agenda. We're going to go over the equipment, some historical information because we have some new board members here on what we've done, what the scope is, a little bit more about our mechanical heating and air conditioning system, as that's extremely important to this project. The value of the system, some of the scope highlights. We have a cost update and a funding update, and then a schedule update. So Dan is actually up first. Or do you want to say something, Ron, before? Okay. Dan is up first to talk about our equipment.
Thank you, Lyndall. I'll move this away. Everyone has a copy of this, and I'm sure you can read it better than I can in this angle, but basically, this is a list of the major equipment at all of our schools: boilers, chillers, univents, electrical panels. The highlight that I'd like to talk about, all of it is way beyond its normal life. Our crew does a good job of keeping it online. We do have daily occurrences that univents have problems and classes are disrupted and people go in and work on them. We frequently, since I've been here, I've had emergencies that literally caused us to close school, which is regrettable. That's kind of a summary of the overall equipment, but the univent piece is the piece that is the biggest challenge. You know, a univent was invented about 100 years ago by a gentleman that said, chimneys are coming out of classrooms, we're going to start bringing in outside air and we're going to use steam heat. So they cored a hole through the wall, they stuck a steam radiator in front of it, put a fan on it, and started sucking in outside air. That's kind of the origin of a univent. It was really designed to only work in the heating mode. Univents are designed to work in heating mode because you can have one location in the room, you blow a lot of heat through it, heat rises naturally, it moves about the room, cascades down the walls, keeps the space warm, okay? So heating mode, univents can work really well. You can always heat the air more during the winter and bring in a lot of outside air for health, comfort, environmental reasons during the winter. But when you go into the summer mode and you try to cool with a univent, univents were never designed to be used for air conditioning. Somebody came up with the concept because everyone had univents ready, and schools started thinking, hey, let's air condition. So we'll start pumping cold water through the same pipes we pump the hot water through. We'll create new control strategies, and we'll create air conditioning in a classroom. So if you're going to make an analysis, first off, you would rather have central air in your home than have a one window shaker in the far corner of a room. So if this room had a univent, like a window shaker air conditioner, you're going to get all your cold air over there. The cold air gets fired out of the univent or the air conditioner. Cold air naturally settles. You can't do anything about it. It starts cascading to the floor. It doesn't expand well into the space because it doesn't have a lot of energy. And then in the face of the univent, in the bottom, you have a grill. You suck the cold air back into the univent and recirculate it back out in the room. And it never makes it out to the corners. It never makes it out to the far distances from the univent. So they just aren't really well designed in the first place. Everyone jumped on board and started putting them in for air conditioning in the 80s when they went from, most schools were unair conditioned, and they say, let's find a solution that we can afford to provide air conditioning for the students. But the reality is they're far from ideal. So when you combine the length they've been around, the fact they're way beyond the end of life, and the fact that they really don't work in the first place very well, you just have a really bad package. So we struggle with it, we live with it. During COVID, I don't think people should forget the fact that during COVID, we were all talking about air quality and health and our students, and the reality is we tried to pump in as much outside air as we could during COVID, and on a hot, humid day, the classrooms were, humidity levels were so excessive. I mean, you walked in, you felt like you were in just a cool, damp space, because they really can't extract that amount of moisture when you're bringing that much outside air across them. So they're not a great fit for what we have. The mechanical systems overall are all old. So I think we should look to the future and say, hey, it's 2022. What kind of systems are around, just like in 1917, the univent was invented, and how can we benefit our students by incorporating them into our buildings? And there's several options, preferred options, and then there's several options. But the reality is, the systems we have, they need a lot of work. And the reason that they haven't gotten that work is because it requires a lot of infrastructural damage or modification in order to tear out old mechanical systems and put new ones in. So when you get involved in it, you kind of get involved into the whole job. So that's why I understand the project seems to be, it is a lot of work. There are a lot of aspects that need to be covered, but I think that to do any one portion of it and try to address one little portion of it just leads down the road for future boards or future community members to just continue to have a problem that isn't being rectified. So it's a tough choice. I mean, we all have univents because they're difficult it's difficult to afford to replace them. I had the good fortune when I was at the Glenbrooks that over a period of 5 or 7 years, we got rid of every univent. When I arrived there in 2004, every room had a univent. And over time, we replaced the systems and changed them out to systems where you didn't have to have the univent. So I'm sorry, I don't want to keep going on because there's limited time, but if you take Patty, for example, she is sitting by a univent, and the temperature on her back is probably 5 or 7 or more degrees cooler than the temperature on Ron's back. And the sound level over there, it's not real loud to you, but it's pretty loud to her. So the reason that we chose to get rid of the univents in my previous role was when you looked across the classroom as an instructor, the 4 students or 6 students that were sitting next to the univent had a real disadvantage over the students that sat anywhere else in the classroom. They had a drafty, noisy spot that they resided. So I think that's a really good reason also to change them and come up with a different solution. So, any questions about age of equipment or any of that? I apologize, yes.
I have more questions on what you did previously. How did you replace univents over a 5 to 7 year period instead of a all at once kind of solution that we're talking about?
Okay, so basically in high school, what we were able to do is in a wing and a floor at a time, we tore out and gutted and remodeled. Part of them went away because the building was totally torn down. I apologize, that didn't happen in one summer, that happened over a whole year. So we tore down a wing, got rid of 20, 30 univents by doing that. The other ones were done by replacing the mechanical systems over the summer months with other style in mechanical systems. Also involved giving up a classroom or two and building mechanical rooms on the same level of the classrooms in the school, ducting in systems, and then eliminating the univents. However, we did remain a steam plant, hot water plant, as opposed to the recommendations that are being furnished, which are to switch away from that. Yeah. Any other questions about mechanicals? Thank you.
And there will be more information on the mechanicals too. So I just want to start with a little positive. This is our parking lot. If you happen to drive through here with all that rain, you didn't see any puddling on the permeable paver. We do still have a little concrete and some asphalt in the back, but it turned out very well. It was done pretty much in time for school, and I think it looks beautiful. Okay, so I talked about this in the budget, but we have been saving money to help us fund our capital projects. In fiscal year 2020, we transferred $5.5 million into capital projects to help pay for the Prairie Trail School renovation. Last year, we transferred $2 million in anticipation of and for part of the design for the infrastructure projects that we had planned for the future at the elementary schools. This year's budget has $3.3 million transferred to capital projects to start the mechanical upgrades and to do the roofs this fiscal year. So just to give you a little history, just as a reminder, we have been planning for these upgrades, infrastructure upgrades, for a very long time. In 2017, the state requires us to do a 10-year life safety study, so every 10 years. So we did that in 2017. We knew that our equipment was aging, so we also did a facilities assessment at that time so we could understand what our needs would be, and that would help us with future planning. The board in 2020 decided to make Parkview School and our new preschool and kindergarten center a priority. We now have Prairie Trail School, and that was funded with reserves and bonds. At that time, we were anticipating that we would need to do a referendum for any other infrastructure upgrades. However, we had some positive news. 2021, we did update the facilities assessment because by that time it was almost 5 years old. And then the legislature did something really good for school districts. Every year, because of property tax appeals, we have to give back close to $1 million worth of our taxes. So the legislature put into law that we will get a rebate for those taxes. It's about 80% of that $1 million every year. And that will come in the following year. We did have some positive fund balances over the COVID years. Remote learning, we had a lot less expenditures. We also had a lot of staff vacancies, which we hope we have filled this year because it is not good for schools, but we did have some positive fund balances there. So with all of that, we reviewed our financing for these projects and determined that we could do the upgrades at Euclid and Indian Grove with our fund balances and with $20 million in bonds. We would still have to do a referendum for the middle school, at least that's the plan at this point. Some of the board meetings that we had to talk about that, many of you will remember these. Back in 2018, February 2018, we did an community engagement on facilities. March of 2021, we had an update on the facilities assessment. Last October, we again did a community engagement on facilities. And then we had in November an operations committee of the whole where we reviewed the scope. We reviewed a phased approach because it's very difficult to get all of the buildings done at once. And they determined that we would complete one school at a time, starting with Euclid, then Indian Grove, and finally the middle school. We also joined the Department of Energy's Better Climate Challenge to reduce our carbon footprint by 30%. That's important in the type of mechanical system we chose. In November, we had a finance committee to review the financing options. Then in February, the board reviewed the scope and approved the architect fees for Euclid and Indian Grove. And then we came back the following month, did the same thing for the middle school, and approved the schematic design, the first design for that school. And then we also had an update on financing options in April. So that leaves us where we are right now. The schematic designs have been completed for all of the schools. Nicholas gave us cost estimates based on the schematic design. Now, the schematic design is not the final design. It's not even a 60% design. It's some basic drawings with a number of allowances. But based on that, our estimates have increased 20% due to inflation and some of the supply chain disruptions. However, we have positive fund balances from last fiscal year, much more than we were anticipating. We are selling Nipper School. We're anticipating our 2022 levy, which would be for the FY24 year, and possibly our 2023 levy, which would be for like the FY25 year, will be at a 5%, which is the cap for school districts, because inflation was much more than that. And then we are also right now, because of the way the construction market is, or that we're considering doing a little bit more phased for our projects. We would do the elementary schools over 2 years, give us time to do, if we need to, do a referendum for the middle school, and then do that project over three years. So you'll hear more about that later. But I'm going to have Jeff Oakes is going to talk more about what Dan was talking about with our unit ventilators and the system we've chosen.
There we go. So thanks, everyone. My name is Jeff Oak. I'm with IMEG Corporation. So we handle a lot of the engineering for the projects that you've done over the last several years. I'm sorry. For the report. Okay, great. So as Dan was going into, the schools right now have unit ventilators, just like what you see over here. The biggest issues are temperature control throughout the space, proper filtration, proper humidification control, and then acoustics have just proven to be a big issue within classrooms for the students that are adjacent to the unit ventilators. So over the past maybe 20 years in the industry, there's been a lot of study as to what is a better system to serve a classroom. And we've certainly studied that a lot, and there's been a lot of studies throughout the industry as to what to do. And so as part of this project, we looked at a lot of different options, and we worked very closely with Nicholas and very closely with Ron and his team to study, whether we go with a traditional variable air volume system, or what would it consist of if we looked at a unit ventilator system option, boilers and chillers, maybe a variable refrigerant flow. I think we even looked at geothermal. We looked at a lot of different system options to weigh the impact that they had on maintenance, carbon footprint, energy cost, first cost, and just lots of different options, even impact to the classroom. And after looking at all that different information and talking with Lyndall and her team about what the goals were for the district, as she just mentioned, to reduce the carbon footprint was very important to you. We kind of settled on what's referred to as a variable refrigerant flow system. And I have a diagram of that I'd like to kind of show real quick. And basically, so if this was just a diagram of a couple classrooms and maybe some offices within your school, what you see here is what's called a dedicated outside air handling unit. So what that does is that brings in fresh air to your space. It'll filter it, it'll temper it to bring it to the proper temperature, and it'll dehumidify it, and then it'll deliver guaranteed the proper amount of ventilation air to each classroom or each conference room or each office to make sure you're getting good indoor air quality to each of the students and staff. Then we have a second system, which consists of each of these little fan coil units that are located within each space. And that's what provides your individual temperature control. So you have a thermostat on the wall. You can tell it whether you want it 68 degrees or 72 degrees or whatever that teacher wants. They can move it up and down, and that will control the temperature within the space in a very energy efficient manner. We really like this system because it keeps all of the fans outside of the space. You don't have the fan noise that the unit ventilator has, keeps it away from students. You get very good air distribution of that fresh air. We can measure how much fresh air you're getting to the space so you know that you're getting the proper amount. You can have very good filtration in here. The filters inside the unit ventilator are what's referred to as MERV 8. We can get commonly up to what's called MERV 13, which is tremendously higher filtration efficiency within the dedicated outside air systems. And it's just a much more energy efficient system as well. In this particular system, when we bring fresh air into the space, let's call it, it's at 72 degrees, you eventually have to take that air out. Well, the univentilator, what it does, it just throws it outside and it kind of wastes the energy that you use to heat that air up. With this system, we take that air back through this energy recovery unit. It transfers that heat energy to the outside air that you're bringing in, so we don't have to use electric or gas or whatever to heat it up as much. This system in particularly matches some of your district's goals of reducing carbon footprint because it can be all electric. So some of the other options utilize gas for the heating, and that would be harder to offset with photovoltaic panels if you were ever to decide to do that in the future. That was another added benefit that we went with this. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to point. So this is a little bit of the analysis that we did. You know, we looked at the EUI, which is basically your measurement of energy, the carbon footprint impact, and the first cost impact. And so like the baseline unit vent, boiler, and chiller had an energy EUI factor of 51. The VRF system that we're looking at had a 37 for a 28% reduction. And then the carbon footprint was a 5% improvement from 328 to 312. First cost is higher for the VRF system, but your operational cost, this is, when we measured it about a year and a half ago and we were doing our energy modeling based on the rates that occurred at that time, the operational cost was the same. But obviously as natural gas costs are increasing, that will start to offset each other with the VRF system being less cost to operate. Is this you?
Just a quick statement. The system that he described is the system that's at Permeable for her.
Could I ask a question? Could I ask a question before you go on?
Absolutely, yes.
So this is probably more for Nicholas. What system is Glenview putting in?
Well, I can answer that too. At the middle school, we converted about half of, you can answer this too. At the middle school, we converted about half of it to a VRF system, but they ran into phase 2 budget constraints, and so they're going to maintain hot water in part of the school. And then it's kind of a hybrid system. And you can talk about the additions too.
Yeah, so a good portion of the project is going with this group. Sorry. I'm not good at that. A good portion of that project is going with the variable refrigerant flow system that we've described and proposed here. There's also portions of that building that are going to, where you have, can you go back one slide? One more. They still have this dedicated outside air unit, but instead of the variable refrigerant flow system, they utilize fan coil units, so they're still making use of their boilers and chillers that they have, or putting in new boilers and chillers.
And why did they choose to do that, do you know?
Budget constraints.
Budget constraints?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so, coming at this from a little bit different angle, this is a really interesting survey that was done by the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, the Harvard School of Public Health, and it specifically dealt with schools and school environments, and it's a comprehensive national assessment to talk about educational environments. And so, student health affects student thinking, which affects student performance. That was the main takeaway from this. And I would encourage you to pull this up. It's very easily accessible. We can give the district a copy. You can put it on your website. But basically, it underscores what we all know intuitively, and that is that the buildings do have a significant impact on the kids' ability to learn, think, and perform. And specifically, it talks about how poor ventilation, uncomfortable temperatures, and excessively noisy conditions diminish that student's ability to learn. So it's well documented. All of the data is in here. It's a national survey. It's a broad brush approach, but it's intuitive to us. We sense that that's the impact on the kids, but this is data that supports all of that. So I wanted to share that with you because it's not really an opinion. It's well established that this is the appropriate thing for educational environments, and so that's why we are so passionate about promoting it, because it truly has an impact on the student's ability to learn. Questions on this study? And here are, just to hammer this home again, the non-foundational components of a healthy building, and 6 of the 9 foundational components of a healthy building will be impacted by this one decision on mechanical systems. And so this does have a significant impact on that educational environment. Okay, so scope highlights. I'm going to still stay with this. This is from the February 2022 presentation. Lyndall talked about that in our sequence. That was one of our meetings where we rolled out the scope of work. But again, just to hammer home what is included in the scope of work, we did include some health, life, safety work, primarily door closers, for example. There's mason repairs included in the scope because we're locked in on HVAC discussions, but this is all of the other things that are included in the scope of work. Of course, we talked about the mechanical equipment. There are electrical panels and wiring replacement that will be happening at Euclid. Galvanized piping, there is still some remaining galvanized piping in that building. Automatic fire sprinkler systems, which is triggered by the code because of the extent of the remodeling that we're doing. That triggers the sprinkler requirement for the school to be retrofitted, which also, I believe, requires a new water service and some other things. Roof replacements, those have been patched together and bandaged, and now we need to go through a roof replacement cycle. And finally, security improvements, and Lyndall referenced that earlier. Some of this is in the scope, some of this is being done directly by the district, but this is primarily grant money for security improvements.
And the ADA doors.
Okay. Yeah, and that's actually on the diagram. Improving the accessibility for the classroom since it's being remodeled. It didn't show up on the list. So, but anyway, again, Indian Grove, very, very similar. We had some electrical repairs that were included under health, life, safety. Again, masonry, VRF, electrical panels, galvanized piping, fire sprinkler. Paving replacement popped up at this school. That's still remaining at Indian Grove. And then the other 2 pieces are the same as what we saw at the Euclid site. Again, one other scope highlight, these are on the far east end of the school over at Euclid. We are looking at converting that space into a new LRC. And this is the existing condition down there. These are some large kindergarten classrooms that because we moved them out, now we have this opportunity to repurpose and reimagine that space. And this is a new layout of the proposed flexible learning environment down there at Euclid, and it's only happening at Euclid. And we are, well, here's where the ADA reference is made. We are doing, as Lyndall said, some ADA reference remodeling components, but we're also, as I mentioned before, we're going after some of the remaining galvanized piping, and because the water service is being upgraded, this is the time to go in there and replace some of the galvanized piping with copper, which causes us to go into the restrooms and do some remodeling in the restrooms. And I think this is the final one, but because we're going all electric, we are going to lose is that the laser? Let's see if I can get this one going. This is the existing boiler room right here, over here on the right-hand side. And because we're going all electric, the idea is to move our gear, which you saw that at Prairie Trails. It's a little closet with some cabinets in there for power. There's no more boiler room. So in this proposed world, we would be able to eliminate those boilers and move the kitchen to this location. And then we repurpose this for storage and other things, but the kitchen actually moves, and the electrical system is housed in this little out space over here. So there are some physical moves in the building to accommodate this new system. Dave.
All right, so as Lyndall mentioned, we were able to complete an estimate on the schematic design for both Euclid and Indian Grove. So just included some of these numbers here. It's no secret that market conditions have been extremely volatile in the last couple of years, actually. But even in the last 8 months, we've seen jumps 10, 15, 20% at times with materials. But along with the cost, one of the other driving factors that we're competing with as we structure these projects and timelines is lead time. And specific to this project, with the extent of the mechanical work, as well as, in fulfilling the district's goals to go all electric, one of the biggest contenders, we'll say, is, providing a new electrical service and requiring a new transformer from ComEd, as well as a new switchgear. Switchgears right now have about a 52+ week lead time, which is absolutely absurd. But given where we're at currently in the design and what's still left by the time we go out to bid, that creates a challenge. Initially, we had hoped to get some of this work done, next year, specific to Euclid, but just understanding current lead times and the scope that's been outlined, I'm kind of transitioning. I don't know. Oh, I have the clicker. Oh, sweet.
I actually have another.
Oh, do you have a comment that you want to throw in there?
Yeah, then we'll talk about the schedule. I wanted to just talk about.
This is, I'm going to let you jump in on this one.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it because I wanted to add in the funding aspect, because yes, the prices went up, and in this particular little spreadsheet, which you probably can't see from far away, the cost for the actual hard cost for the construction went up 19%, so we increased the soft costs, which cover all the architect fees, the construction manager, asbestos removal, engineering, and whatever else we need to spend there. I increased that by 19%. We do need to do furniture at the schools. We need to replace the first and second grades furniture. We did the third, fourth, and fifth grade. And then when we remove the univents, we're also removing the cabinetry. We'll need to put some kind of cabinets storage in also. So that's in there. So yes, the costs went up. And my estimate, I'm looking at about $27 million to $31.6 million. But as I was talking about, we had some favorable news in terms of extra fund balances, grants, the tax rebates, the taxes being able to levy at 5%, selling NIPR. So I'm still looking that we should have the funding to do the 2 schools, even with the increased prices. And we won't know for sure what those prices are until we actually go out to bid on the projects. So now Dave is going to talk about the schedule, a little bit more about why we phased it, and what that schedule would be if we continue with the project as planned.
All right, now we can talk schedule a little bit. So as I mentioned, one of the biggest driving factors in creating our schedule for these projects is just based on lead time for equipment. And so on top of that, we also look at workload as well. I mean, taking on an entire school is doable. But as we kind of thought through as far as the scope that we're looking to get accomplished in 1 year, and if we're going to have to push for a year because of lead time issues, is there something that we can get done in the next year to save on some of the escalation, as well as kind of ease on the load of what needs to be done in the following year? So as we took a hard look at it and talked through what were some items or scope or anything that we could get done in 2023, and we kind of landed on some roof work that we can look at getting accomplished, and it's actually the bulk of the roof work at Euclid, leaving some of the roof work that would be required where we have mass amounts of mechanical equipment that's going to look to be replaced the following year, so we can leave that in place. But we would essentially be looking to phase out the roofing bid in terms of, we'd have maybe 80% of it done in 2023, and then the remaining 20% to be done the following year with the rest of the Euclid renovation. So we were looking to split that into 2 phases, with the bulk of the work being done in the summer of 2024 for Euclid, and then we'd follow that same pattern for Indian Grove as well. But in general, that's why we typically look to phase projects. I mean, if we can get it all done in 1 year, that's the preference, but we are living in strange times right now where we're just kind of at the mercy of lead times and mechanical equipment, and I didn't quite get to finish, but the transformer piece of this is important because even, I know, Donna, you mentioned Glenview. I'm still waiting for a transformer that we signed a contract for in September of last year. So that just goes to show that, you know, we don't want to try and ramrod something through knowing that there's absolutely a possibility that by the time we get to the summer, we're going to be missing these critical components, and the last thing we want to do is tear apart a building and not be able to put it back together. So that's a bit about what we're looking at there. So this is just kind of an overview of what we're looking at. So we did also get a 60% set of construction documents, which we are currently in the process of estimating and budgeting right now. No real major scope changes, so I don't anticipate any real big swings on this, but we're still getting numbers in for that. So we'll be putting that together, you know, for the rest of this month into the early parts of October as well. But essentially right now we're looking to move forward with that roofing design work, getting that completed so that we could bid that in October, as well as looking at making a pre-purchase or finishing bidding documents for any of the electrical and mechanical equipment that have the long lead times. So that's what's going to be first on the docket for what we'll be looking to bid out for that roof work being completed in 2023. So we'd be looking to get approval for the roof work as well as for the mechanical and any electrical pre-purchase packages in December. And then in June through August of 2023, that's when we look to complete this first phase at Euclid of the roof work. In the meantime, design work will continue for Indian Grove, and then we'll be bidding the remaining Euclid work as well as the Indian Grove roofs in July of 2023. Looking to get that awarded in August. And then in June and August of 2024, we would take on the bulk of the project at Euclid as well as the Indian Grove roof. And then in July of 2024, we would then bid the remaining Indian Grove work. So that's all the interior renovation work, all the HVAC, everything else. And then in August, we'd look to get that awarded. And then we'd be wrapping up construction of phase 3, which would be that Indian Grove remaining construction. And that's our first go at sequencing the construction for both Euclid and Indian Grove. Regarding RTMS, Lyndall mentioned a possible referendum. We are currently in the process of still estimating for that schematic design effort, so we'll be looking to get those numbers here in October established as well, because that will help add to the discussion. Anything else schedule-wise that we need to touch on?
Yeah, other than we will do it over the course of 3 years because it is a bigger school than the other schools. And one of the main reasons for bidding out the mechanical and electrical equipment is so that when we tear the school out and tear out all of the mechanicals, we'll have something on hand that we can put back in, so we'll be able to get our students back into the school in the fall. So, and we won't be waiting for it because we will make sure it's on site before we actually start the demolition. So I think we're at questions now.
Actually, before we get to questions, so I'd like to thank Dan, Jeff, Dave, Ron, and Lyndall for the presentation. The Operations Committee, when we met last week, we, like District 34, had serious reservations regarding the budget and whether we would be able to afford this version of what you guys had proposed, which I think is very nice. But again, it does come down to money, and that is a big concern that we have. So before the board gets into the questions, the other piece that I know is of grave concern is the four-letter word referendum. We failed twice in the past, and I think those of us that are on the board that have lived through it are very concerned that we would have any chance of passing it. So the Operations Committee did not make a recommendation one way or the other. We felt that we would like to see more options, something that Dan kind of said. You said, what are the several options? I said, one of the several options Dan just mentioned. So while we like the presentation, from my perspective, and I'm not speaking for Bill or Robert who were at the meeting, I too would like to see other options that maybe we can afford and not have to worry about that 4-letter word. Thank you.
Sorry. These are some of those options that you asked about. The difference in cost between doing a univentilator and the mechanical system, this was back in November, we haven't re-estimated, was $700,000 per building. In the scope of it, we still have to, because we have to take all the piping for the univentilators is original. We have had leaks. We had a flood over at Prairie Trails before we redid that school from one of those pipes that broke. So we need to replace all that galvanized pipe. So according to the architects, that triggers that we have to do all of the other work too, which is the sprinklers and the ADA doors and some of the bathroom work, all of that other work. So your savings is not going to be huge if you decide to go with a base model.
Yeah, and if you remodel more than 50% of your school building within 30 months, it triggers the sprinkler requirement. That's just a code requirement.
I know at the operations committee meeting, we mentioned 2 options. One was called the 2-pipe and one was called the 4-pipe. Are either of those?
This is actually the 4-pipe.
Okay,
So I guess if we did a 2-pipe, it would be a bit cheaper than that.
okay, thank you.
Okay, and another question here. Do these cost variances include the conversion to all electric?
Let's see, let me look at, so the second and fourth option on the list are all electric.
Yep.
The first and third are gas.
Okay, so the second and third, do those include all of the electrical upgrade costs?
Yes.
Including bringing in a new circuit and?
Yes.
Becky, you had a question?
It was actually about this slide. What is the expected lifetime for the VRF system compared to like the current boiler system? Are they similar?
Yeah, very similar, 20 to 25 years.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to think where to even begin.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a ton of info. So, a couple thoughts. One, sounds great, looks great, would be awesome to have. Who wouldn't want to do this if we could afford it without a referendum? In my opinion, sounds good. But reality is I doubt that we're in any better shape than Glenview was. Probably worse financially speaking for capital investment projects. And I really dislike the term possible referendum. I like the idea of referendum just not even coming to the table. And so then what happens? Well, just what is the option? It looks like a partial,
I mean,
like a best case scenario out of a full comprehensive plan.
So if you want to, if you want to do all 3 schools, at this point in time, we don't know what's going to happen over the next 5 years. We know we can afford to do 2 schools. So your choice is, do you want to leave those 2 schools or put in, a 1900 system into those 2 schools, or do you want to work as you can, school by school, and get them up to date, and then, decide whether or not you need to go out to referendum or you're going to wait a while till you can actually afford to do the middle school. I mean, we can free up some bonds and, there might be some other financing options at a certain point in time. So that's really your choice. You can wait, you can put in an old, well, there's 3 choices. You can put in an old system and maybe do it for all schools. But I'm not even sure about that because of all the other upgrades you've got to do, the sprinklers, I don't think you can because it's not that big of a difference in the cost. So the projects are still going to cost about as much. So we could just continue to wait, and the equipment's going to get older and older, and Dan can talk to you about that, until we have enough money that we can do all of the schools. Or we can do them school by school, and when we get to the last school, which and this was the plan the board approved back in October was to do it school by school. We've always said there will have to be a referendum. There will most likely need a referendum for the middle school. That's always been part of the plan. And it was a referendum from all three, but we did find a way to afford 2 schools. So we can wait for all of them until we have enough money to do them all, or we can start doing them one by one in a manner that will be good for the next, it's the type of system that'll work for the next 50 years. Maybe we'll have to replace, I mean, when you're talking about replacing it in the future, you're talking about maybe replacing the DOAS systems on the roof. I assume probably the cassettes inside the classroom, but it's not all the piping. The piping's there. So it's less of a replacement down the road. You're talking about being set up for when there are solar credits and we can get solar panels and we don't have to pay for electricity anymore. We'll be set up for that. We're looking to the future. So, I mean,
I totally agree,
so that's
and
kind of,
understand like that is the best end goal vision.
but I don't see that you can't, I mean, even just
I
replacing
think
the
we have a
univents.
$33 million budget.
But even replacing the univents, once we start doing that, we're totally remodeling the school, and we're going to trigger all of the other costs which add up to the project, add up on the project. So you're talking maybe a difference per school of a couple $1 million.
That's a lot.
But it's not going to afford you to do the middle school.
I mean, there has to be other things that we could do in phases. If 7 years is a horizon that we can tack on a little bit of each school. I don't know how exactly you do it exactly. I get, you can't rip off the lid of a school and then wait 3 years to put the roof back on because you have to do all these other components, right? So that part I get, and the idealness of getting it all done at one time. But in the reality of the situation, if we're banking on let's spend all our money and then see what happens in 2 years, that doesn't seem reasonable.
I mean, that has been.
I think what has been was discussed is that we wanted to always see an alternative to a referendum option.
And I don't have that crystal ball yet. I need to I need to bring Liz in and talk about financing and where we might be. I don't have that crystal ball. I mean, a year ago I was saying you had to do a referendum for everything, and then there was some, besides, there was some very positive financial things that happened so that we are able to do the 2 schools at least without the referendum.
Duly noted. And so at this point in time, I feel like we have a great best case scenario option. And that if we don't have a referendum, if it never comes to the table, if it doesn't pass, then what? And so maybe we need another 6 months to figure out then what, in my opinion, on this scenario.
So I guess my question would be, what are you looking for on the then what?
I would like to know what is the best thing we can do for our schools for $33 million, because that does not require a referendum.
So you want to...
It's call it our worst case scenario with our self-funded money, and then if we gradually accumulate another $600,000 a year in operating surplus for the next 6 years, then we got another decent chunk of money to do some other aspect of the project. If we're not going the all-electric, it's a great goal, but if we financially can't achieve it, then it's not a good goal.
And I guess Ron, you'll have to talk, how would you do it, or Dave, how would you do it in a phased approach?
Well, I think this is what we need you guys to work on. And I think you got 3 areas that you can work on here, okay? You got technology selections, you got timeline, okay, like what is done in various increments or as sets. And then the third piece is financing. I mean, other bonds, other alternative methods of financing.
And the finance committee will look at that at the next finance committee.
Okay, but
Yes.
somewhere in those 3 options, whatever, stretching out, prioritizing, there's got to be something where we can live within.
Okay, so that will, what is on the table tonight to approve of the architect fees? This will require further architect fees than what we had planned, because they have to go back and start over again. So, that's what's on the table for tonight. That was the action item. That and the $50,000 grant, which we will have to recreate. So,
Okay, a couple things have swirled through my mind here. The costs have gone up 19%. And I know if I was remodeling at home and my budget went up by 19%, I would be pulling back to see what I could cut. But I'm also a visual person, so I need to understand. So that unit right there, walk me through this. We would be ripping it out.
yes.
That would then mean the floor has to be fixed and the wall would have to be fixed, you know, like plastered or whatever. And then the masonry repairs, that's the unit that's on the outside, the little vents on the outside would have to come out and bricks would have to go in there?
Yeah, that, there would be, we would have to fill in the old opening, but the masonry repairs
Oh,
that
and
you
they
saw,
too.
that radiator.
Okay.
The masonry repairs that you saw in the presentation are outside, lintels, all brick and things like that. It's similar, but a different issue.
But the costs of fixing the outside, pulling that grill out is in the budget? Okay. So then when we pull them out and we put the new ones in, that's coming through the ceiling here, which means all of the classroom ceilings have to come out. And while the ceilings are out, you're redoing the pipe that carries the water. Is that what you're saying?
The domestic water, and then we're putting a sprinkler system.
And you're doing a sprinkling system. You would then doing electrical, the lights. And then would you be putting cameras in here for security or anything like that?
Not in the classrooms,
Okay.
but in like
In the hallways?
in the hallways, cafeteria, some
Okay.
more outside. That was what was covered by the security grant.
Okay, so then when we get up on the roof, okay, you're up on the roof and you got these big units up there. But you're saying before you put those units up, you want to rip out what's up there now and redo the roof.
Which we need to do anyway.
Right,
because-
but what I'm trying to figure out is, so let's pretend you're at Euclid and it's a huge building and let's pretend over the gym, okay? Are you just going to do the roof over the gym and pull the HV system off of the gym? And then what would be there if we're waiting for these units to come in?
We would have to modify that roofing system in the future to receive it.
So
we
you
had-
would be doing extra work? Are we being charged for that?
We had talked about actually trying to do some of the reinforcing under the roof with the roof repairs for the new DOAS units, because there's panel points and bar joists and things that have to be reinforced. So we may
So
try to
you're-
do some of that reinforcement.
It's called curbs. The goal of the roof work is on areas where there isn't mechanical equipment.
Oh, so where there's
we
no
are
mechanical is where you'd be ripping it up and putting the roof down?
Well,
Okay.
we're actually doing roofing across the whole of the building because the roofs are that old, so we would be replacing the whole building roofs at one time.
And that's why Dave said it was 80%.
Right, so the bulk of the mechanical equipment is focused on the roof area.
In one area?
Yeah,
Okay,
and
I
we're
got
not
it.
gonna touch that
Okay.
until we're doing the rest of the.
Okay.
of the
Okay, so now, I've been here a long time, and we used to do the roofs in sections so that it wouldn't be so expensive. So why are we doing let's take Euclid, why are we doing all of the roof except for that one little mechanical section? Why aren't we doing it in sections to save money?
That goes back to the timeline thing, and I like the technology selections and everything, but we do have some timeline stuff we can work with, like phased approaches, and I'd also like to see the funding stuff, like what's the next bond cycle? There's. Yeah, sorry. Well,
Yeah,
complimenting
I've got a bunch of questions. that you guys brought?
To speak to that, but I mean,
With roof areas, I mean, it's warranty is a big part of it, right? So when you do a roof, you get a warranty. So if, I don't know what the current life cycle is on the roof systems at Euclid or Indian Grove, but if you're gonna replace the roof, it's ideal to do it all at once, so that way you have one roofing warranty instead of every area has a different warranty, so then you're just, it gets a little bit complicated because you've got different contractors working on different roofing areas, and so when there are warranty calls, I mean, that's just one possible scenario. Yes, that was gonna be my next comment, is that, you know, every year you push off work, you may save some money, but you're gonna have escalation. I mean, very rare that costs go down year after year. So you're gonna be paying more. So there's a point where it's, well, if you do the whole thing, you're gonna save on that escalation cost. You're gonna have, you know, one warranty for the whole roof, which is easier to maintain. You can do it in different phases. And, you know, if cost is that driving factor for first cost for this year, then that's can be taken into consideration, but just also has to be understood.
It's always a driving factor.
Right. But it just has to be understood that you're going to be paying more every year for those different roof areas.
And the roofs are 20 years old, which is the end of their lifespan.
Correct. We used to do a rolling plan. We had a rolling plan. Every 6 years, 7 years, we did a section of roof. We would do a section at Euclid. At the same time, we'd do a section at Indian Grove and the middle school. It was all done in sections to save money. We didn't, I shouldn't say we didn't care, but warranty was just part of the working plan.
But according to Dave, we'll save more money if we do it all at once.
Okay, so now my other question is, I've been hearing the comments here, all electric, we're going all electric, all electric. What does that entail? Why are you saying all electric? Did we as a board ever say we wanted that building to be, all of the buildings to be all electric? And in order to be all electric, I understand you're saying we're putting in transformers and new electric panels and all this other stuff. And I also hear the word solar panels being thrown around. Are you saying we're putting solar, you know, somebody said we base these schematics and everything on the goals of the district. And I can tell you, as a school board member, I never once voted for, I mean, other than at the Prairie Trails, for solar panels to be put eventually on all of our schools. So is that the route we're going down?
Sure, we can go whatever route you'd like. There's a couple of options. The industry is heading towards electric, you know, vehicles, electrically heated buildings, just kind of in general. The belief there is that in general, as a society, we can clean up the power grid as a society that'll clean up the environment easier than we can clean up by burning fossil fuels into the environment. So that's where the industry is going. Doesn't mean that you have to go that route. We did look at both options. I think we even designed into the schematic design a gas-fired rooftop unit option compared to an electrically heated option that you can study. So I think.
There's no plans right now, there's no solar anywhere in any design. It's positioning you for perhaps future grants in solar
if you ever wanted to be able to completely offset the power that you've put into your HVAC system through the use of solar panels in a similar fashion that you did in the childhood center, then you can do that. You don't have to. Nothing's forcing you to do that in the future, but it would give you that option. If you went with gas heat, it's much more difficult to offset gas heat than it is all electric. So either way, we can heat your building, whether it's gas or electricity, but those are the reasons why the industry is moving to electricity for heat.
Yeah, and this is a side note. So I do know in our strategic plan, when we were going through all of this, like one of the tenets of that plan was to make sure that our students and community are environmentally aware So I understand where we were going with this, and we did approve the strategic plan at that point. And I also understand that like this may be off in the future, but I think that was, I mean, it was a long time ago now too, though, but I think that was one of the strategic items that we were kind of looking toward, was figuring out how to be more responsible within our community toward environmentally healthy conditions. So,
If the long-term goal is to reduce your carbon footprint, then that's a reason to push towards electricity.
Well, I'm trying to balance what I, as a homeowner, this whole community was built in the 1960s, starting in 1960. The whole community. District 26 became what we are nowadays in the 60s. And if you look around, when I look around my neighborhood and the community, a lot of homeowners are upgrading, updating, putting in new things, because the homes and everything, the facilities are old, and the schools are no different. So I see the need, I'm just choking on the cost.
Sure.
And I'm also know as a homeowner, if this HV system replacement, I would be asking my guide, give me something else that's not as expensive.
Sure.
I don't have a problem with doing this in phases. Doesn't bother me. I think it's probably better. The thing that bothers me, that niggles in the back of my mind, is if we're doing it in phases, are the architectural fees and the management fees and everything, is that meter going to be running while we're waiting?
Yeah, it's actually cheaper to do it altogether for you.
But you're not going to be working on Indian Grove schematics for another year, basically now. Indian Grove kind of goes off to the side, doesn't it? Because we're all going to be.
We pay a percentage of the construction cost as architect fees, and it starts with a schematic design, then there's design development, then there's construction documents, and the bid. However, one of the things that could happen with phases is if we phase it and the prices go up, then we're paying a percent of what the new price is going to be. And the architect part and engineering part is the part we have to do first.
Mm-hmm.
So, they have been working on all three schools and the design for all three schools.
So is this like akin to what the Bears are doing in Arlington Heights? They're doing their schematics of what they would like to see, and they're paying the architects for those fees and
Yes.
those plans. And
Yes.
everything. So this is basically the same.
Yes, and we'll continue to pay the fees, but most of the fees are before we have to do the bidding on the project. And then there's some administration of it at the end, but we have to pay the architects up front. We did that at Prairie Trail School over a number of years. They did design us a new school, and then they designed us a bigger school, and then they designed the school that we built. And some of what they had done when they designed the bigger school was part of the design fees for what we ended up with. But we do have to pay them. We have to pay them a fair amount for their time.
Okay.
So I support the green initiative and the electric power and all that wholeheartedly. I think it's a great direction to go. I agree with the industry and positioning ourselves for that ultimately. Fully understand the concept that $33 million all up front right now is cheaper than spreading it over 7 years, which is maybe $37, $38 million, right? Buy a car cash or you finance it for 6 years. You ultimately pay more. But we don't have that much money right now, just as a matter of fact. And so as it stands today, I think it makes more sense to just stretch it out and have an additional cash outlay over that period of time, and we'll accumulate some more funds through future budget planning. Now, maybe if the community wants to be all green right off the bat, we go for a $55 million referendum and do everything in this amazing design plan. And then if the community doesn't want to support the district's initiatives and goals and be environmentally conscious and friendly, and they say no to the 55 million. We as a community want, heat, gas, whatever. Now we have our $33 million plan, or $38 million plan over 6 years if they don't support. And I don't know, I did throw out 55 million, maybe it's 60, maybe it's 50. But to me, now that seems like we have options, as opposed to, well, option A, spend all our money now, and then we have $0 and see what happens, or, I don't know, that seems like the only option that I'm hearing, or we just have other bad stuff. So that's how I would like to see
The cost is actually phased in, even though I put it all in one, at least
So
at
it's
both elementary
this 33
schools.
is
So
over
we
the
only,
next 2 years, basically, right? Because
no,
by the time
that's actually for the
2025
next 4 years. It's 2 years at each school. Yeah, so it's,
So there's going to be 2 years of overlap of
Yes.
middle school? Okay, so it's 4 years, sorry.
that's 4 years, but it is
Well,
just
then stretch it out
it's
double,
4
8
4
years.
years with the elementary schools, and then.
I'm just trying to illustrate the
yeah,
idea
I mean,
that,
it actually is
I
then,
get
it is
it's
spread
more
out over
expensive
about 8
over
years.
longer, but if we want an outstanding, modern, up-to-date district, then I think we need the community to agree with that and agree with all 3 schools at one time. So maybe just maintain status quo the best you can, Dan, the best of your abilities until a referendum in 25, where we say we have a huge grandiose plan to present to you, or here's option B. Just thoughts right off the top of my head, take it or leave it, up for future discussion is my guess.
Yeah, my concern is authorizing to spend money on a path that paints us into a corner where we have to go to a referendum.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So
Well,
until
the
I
analogy that you used at the committee, I thought was perfect, that basically a yes vote tonight is a vote for a referendum.
Yes.
And I just roll for 2 while I've been on the board. I have no reason to believe we would pass one.
Well, and I'm not sure that's the only option here either. Like, I mean, some of it, all of these things going on, I still don't totally understand priorities. I mean, I know we're like age of equipment and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know. I'm still a little fuzzy on just the direness of some of this infrastructure.
Well, and in the middle of this project, Linda would also be retiring, so her replacement would get this referendum,
Yeah.
maybe a referendum on his or her lap on day 1. Welcome to 26.
Yeah.
I read through, I looked at presentation, Linda walked it through me earlier. So just so I'm on the same page as maybe the operations committee, was there a number that is looked at? I mean, it seems like we're held up on the electrical system and the technology being above and beyond, which if you've been in Prairie Trails, it's a world of difference in the airflow than this room, I can tell you. But how much would we save if we just replaced with the old system, like a current system like we have? Like, are we talking about $5 million, or are we talking about a few $100,000? Has that been quoted or looked at?
We left off with concept numbers. That was the previous slide, and then we went into design. So we would have to go back and visit that and see what needed to be done, and reevaluate that. That's what we have to do.
I mean, the one slide we had, it was about $700,000 on the difference in the mechanical system. It really depends on all of what we have to tear up, and that part hasn't been studied. We believe that it's going to be about as much as we'd have to tear up if we put in the univentilators compared to a better ventilation system. Because the direction from the board, we had gone through this, was to go with, to do the schematic designs as we have presented them.
And one other question that kind of concerns me is, like, these are really old. And I had a friend whose, heating equipment went out in his house, and he had to wait a long time for a heater. And so what, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, what level of are we at to say, like, something could break and we can't replace it and we don't know the timeline to get something new? Because 5 years to wait for things that are already 10 or 15 years old seems like a long time.
More than 10 or 15 years.
I mean, past life, past over life.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the challenges that everyone's had for the last 12 months. I mean, you normally could locate a motor for something and go pick it up, right? So we've been very proactive since I've been on board and stocking at least 2 or 3 times more of every common piece as we would have in the past, because we don't want to run out. We don't want to be in that position, but you really don't know. You don't know. I mean, all of a sudden, all the electrical transformer stuff has gone from being 3 months to 52 weeks, right? It just happens. Nobody really understands it. So there's obviously a fear there, you know. So when you have older systems, they're more likely to break, and then if you have a part issue, we all know you're gonna have a longer wait time, you know. So how many pieces do you stock? I mean, there's different philosophies. If you stock all major spares of every single component within a major system, you know, every pump that goes to the boiler system, every variable speed drive that drives a motor, every circuit, if you stock one of all those on your shelf, then you're ready to just throw it right in. You know, that's what they do at nuke plants and things like that, right? So how do you run your school? So we're trying to stock what we think we need, but we can't anticipate everything that'll break. You know? And when you talk about the complexity of doing the full remodel versus partials, and you said, well, could you put a different component in here if it's not even a univent? Could you put something else in the room that's not as expensive as the VRF? We have what's called a one-pipe system, two-pipe system. So basically that means fluid goes into the univent and out of a different pipe, but it's the same pipe, it loops back to the boiler room. So we can only, once again, I talked about the technology of the univents, there's one loop that goes around the building. It's either hot or cold. And that's another challenge you have with the system. So I have to pick a day. You know, it's 82 today, and it was 57 last Monday. And you basically are making control adjustments and making time adjustments and outside air adjustments. If you're not in COVID, you're doing things to try to make it work during the shoulder months, because this was really designed to be for heat. I go back to that. So if we're looking at other systems, the complexity isn't as easy as I'm already distributing cold water to this room. We're going to want to make sure we're going to have to run pipes to every room. If we turn out using any kind of fluid system, you're going to have to run pipes to every room, because you're going to want a hot water loop, a cold water loop, or if you go with VRF and cold water, you're going to need that. So that's why when people talk about doing small pieces is very difficult, that's the reason. To kind of analyze this whole project and say, what part can I do that I can do this year, and then what part will I do next year? We're so far into it. I mean, we're 60 years into this, and decisions that were made over the last 60 years got us to where we are. So it's not as simple as just picking like one segment and working on it. We had discussion of, do you go to the back wing of the building and work your way forward, right? Well, the other challenge, the back wings are all 20 years or more newer than the forward part. So the pieces furthest away from the boiler room or the infrastructure, you really don't want to remodel those first. They're the newest pieces. So no matter how you look at it, it's difficult to come up with a plan to just do small pieces.
What was the logic of doing Indian Grove and Euclid before the middle school? Does that kind of give us a sign that the middle school's in better shape than the 2 elementary schools?
So I would just say one thing would be, for the community, students overall spend 2/3 of their life approximately at the grammar schools and parade trails. So the students spend a lot more time in the lower level environments than they're going to spend. Also, I think that people at that age group are more susceptible to environmental challenges than most kids that are in their teens. So that's kind of the philosophy that I have towards it.
Okay, but they're basically the same systems and roughly the same shape.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there have been updates that have been approved by the board way before my time. I mean, there's been new burners put on the boiler, 20 years ago, and there was other things done.
We did things to the univentilators to make them last for another 5 to 10 years, but that was, way long ago now. I would say that if we don't do something, we don't start working on this, we probably need to add another HVAC mechanic to our staff here, because I don't know that we have 2 people that can do mechanical work. I don't know that the 2 of them would be able to keep up with everything that is going to start going going wrong with the systems too.
But on what,
Agree with that too.
what kind of timeline are you thinking there?
I would say, you know, if we don't start within the next year or two, I mean, his staff is already up to their ears, and, you know, they're very, very busy, so there's that part of it too. And just the cost of maintaining it. Dan's constantly doing another maintenance project because something goes out. And that'll just keep growing as well.
Donna, I have a question for you.
Oh, for me.
Because of your tenure on this board. Have we ever passed a referendum?
Yes.
When was the last time?
The last time was, so we passed a referendum, I think, in the mid-90s to do a swap on the rate, but the rate, you know, between operation of, I think it was operations and education. But before that, every referendum that we did to add to the buildings.
Right, monetarily.
Right, that was tangible. People could see what we were doing with the money. We're adding 4 classrooms. We're upgrading this. We're doing that. Every single one of those. And that was...
Prior to 1990 or throughout the 2000?
1990. No, we haven't had, 90, 91.
So my biggest concern is that we're going to end up like Hinsdale or something, where we start to say, oh, we're going to cut programs, and then eventually they pass a $186 million referendum because all of their schools are in disrepair, and they're threatening to cut programming. Like, I know that none of these options are great, and it is a constant battle between being a taxpayer and being a parent. And honestly, I'm torn between both options, because whereas I feel that a referendum, and obviously I don't speak for everyone on the board, is an investment in my school system to not only help my kids learn, but to help future generations learn, to improve my property sale if I ever choose to leave, or for all of the people who will be choosing to downsize. I just feel like it is an impossible balance between being a person who sees their tax bill and also being a person who wants to provide the best facilities for our teachers to teach in and our kids to learn in. I don't know where I'm going with that. I feel like this is a constant battle that we are going to have. And whereas I would like to see things spread out, I also understand the cost impact of doing everything at one time. I mean, we talk about our houses, but these aren't houses. They're large facilities. Like, I went to replace my kitchen. Well, replacing my kitchen is very different than replacing 42 heaters and cooling, or replacing a cooling system in a facility that is 7 times the size of my house. I mean, actually probably more than that. But I'm just saying, I feel like sometimes when we talk about funding these things and running into a wall, because I agree, I don't want to go out to referendum either. Like, we all live here. We are all going to be impacted by it. But I want to look at it as more of an investment, and I know not everyone feels that way, but that is my opinion.
Okay, I just want to say that, so what's on the agenda is to approve the architectural, to continue with the architectural fees, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay. And I want to say that I appreciate the discussion and the points that are brought up. And while I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, well, I'm for sprinkler systems. I'm for better security. I'm for fixing the roofs. The only thing that's holding me back is this niggly little thing over here. And if that's what's holding me back, oh, not Patty, I'm sorry, not Patty. Yes, for the record, is this heating system, then sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and go with what's out there, and it all comes as kind of a package deal. So, I will go ahead and support what's on the agenda to move forward, even if it does take us on the step to a referendum. Being the person on the board with the longest longevity, the community will support something that they see that is tangible. What am I getting for it? You're not paying your bills. Don't come to me and say, I need more money to pay my bills. Don't come to me.
Not according to our last two referendums.
Well, that's right. That's right.
But it was a preschool. I mean, I think that the first one was a preschool. The second one was preschool and kindergarten, but it was also a grade level center. There were other things going on besides just the improving the buildings.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I kind of also noticed over the years that when we start out to do something big ticket wise, there's so many variables that change, just like this is changing now, and things can change again. And I understand Louis saying, well, let's spend what we got and see what happens in 2 years. Well, guess what? I'm for that. If we have to go for a referendum in 2 years, we at least got 2 schools done and modernized and up to date, and we'll see what we can do with the middle school.
It's actually 4 years.
4 years?
Yeah.
Okay. 4 years down the road. Who knows? In 4 years, what's that 5%, the levy?
The levy at 5%, maybe, yeah, if inflation, yeah.
Inflation is at what, 9% or
Yes.
13, whatever it is? And the levies we can levy for up to 5%. Well, and we've only been levying for 1.2 because that's what the CPI is. So anyways, in 4 years, a lot can change, guys. And me personally, I will be voting for this.
I'm so sorry, I have one more question.
Sorry.
Okay, I didn't want to butt anybody else. So if we were to wait, how long would we be able to wait with inflation being what it is and hoping for relief in comparison to everything breaking in our schools?
I think everything will just get more expensive.
So you think costs will increase
I mean, that's
at
what
an
you-
exponential
that's what-
rate
yeah.
in comparison to inflation coming down? You think prices are going to go up that much to overcompensate?
I think prices will continue. We have not been given any indication that prices are going to go down. I mean, they're doing better than they were, a couple of months ago, 6 months ago. But I mean, they always go up. They rarely ever go down year after year.
So one of my things that came out of the operations committee, and it's a little bit geared towards finance too, but we have sources of income. We have taxes. We also have bonds. We have a bond capacity, and we have a big bond coming that we can re-up here in a couple of years. I don't have a good understanding right now of what is the next bond cycle. Like, is there another cycle where we could get another $10, $20 million in, say, 2030, and then could we adjust this plan to address items in that order to that point? I also asked you a question, and you were going to run it by the
yes,
folk about we own these buildings. You look at our expenditures; these are our buildings. These are assets. We're not. Is there any way to leverage the equity that we have in these buildings to finance some of this work back into the building? There are finance options and questions here.
There are many different kinds of finance options that we could use to fund the projects. Our limiting factor at this point in time was how much we could afford to pay back for bonds and interest over the course. If we're going to put out a bond for 20 years, all of that period of time, we have to pay back bond and interest. There are some limits on school districts on how much we can bond to, but we could look at some things like leases on the buildings, but we're still limited by how much we can pay back. So, I mean, we got the information that we brought to the operations committee. The next step is to have a finance committee, and I mean, we had an update in April on the financing. Would be to have another update on the financing. At that point in time, that took us to about, I don't know, 2030 or 2035 in terms of what we thought we could afford to pay back every year and, leverage the bonds. At that point in time, we will look at it again. I will be, talking to Liz about it, and she'll put together more options. And I think our next meeting is in November. We'll bring those in November to look at that part. There's no decision to purchase anything or go out to bid until December. So there's a timeline here that we can continue to look at what the options are and how we finance them. The decision tonight was to let the architects continue with their designs.
Okay, that was actually the question I was going to ask you. If we do not vote no tonight, what are the ramifications? So it sounds like if we did vote no tonight or decided not to take a vote on it tonight, do we have a window that would give us a little bit additional time for more discussion? Because one thing that did occur on the operations committee meeting was Dave did talk about a timeline so tight that we need to make a decision sometime soon, because if we don't, then there's a couple things that could happen. Costs could go up, and Euclid would not be in the line of sight for next year.
So the current plan is to do the roofs at Euclid. So we would be looking to get the designs up to the point that we could bid out the roofs, the electrical equipment, and the mechanical equipment we're looking at purchasing through a cooperative. If you don't vote for anything tonight, you don't vote on the architect fees, the architects are not going to proceed to get the drawings to that level. So that would put that off. Our next meeting's in October, so that would put that off. We were planning to go out to bid at the end of October. They're not going to be ready to go out to bid at the end of October.
Yeah, the next decision would be in December, right? I think.
Yeah, the next decision, but they need the construction documents, at least for the roofs and the electrical equipment and the mechanical equipment, in order to do what we needed to do in December, and to go out to bid here at the end of October. If we don't do that, I'm not sure, and Dave can talk about it, whether or not we'll able to do any of the project next summer.
I'd say you have a little bit of flexibility on the mechanical equipment because that's not going in until 2024 anyway. But roofing-wise, I mean, we've seen lead time issues with insulation across the board. I had a conversation with a roofing contractor actually a week ago and asked him what the current conditions are, as far as clients that are looking to bid roof work, what's my deadline here? I mean, when do we need to get out to bid? And he said, essentially, if it's out to bid before the new year, you should be fine, but there's always a what if. So, basically anything after the new year, then we run into the potential for approving a project and then it being summer and us having an issue with material. And that's what we're trying to avoid by bidding it earlier.
So yeah, I'll reiterate what I said on the operations committee. In my opinion here, we vote for this tonight. We are essentially voting to put ourselves into a referendum position in 4 years. There's probably 95% chance of that. What I'm asking or suggesting is that we ask the staff to go back, spend till the next board meeting and rough out some other alternatives, give us some more information, because this spend here, it's what, $400,000 in architecture fees? This is not a small amount. And if we decide to delay this till the following summer, there could be changes in technology. There could be different plans. There could be another fee, to update architectural drawings again. And yes, things are tight, but I'm a no, and I would ask or suggest that we get get some of these answers around financing, timeline, even less so some of the technology selections, because I think that's tight. I think that's good. I think they've done a great job of thoughtfully picking out good solutions here and future-proofing things. But between finance and timeline and, bonds, alternative finance, there's just, I'm not ready to go there yet.
All right, can I entertain a motion and a second to approve the architect fees through design development for Euclid and Indian Grove and through construction documents for Euclid for a total of $881,888. Total architect fees for a project up to $14,999,999 are 8.25% of construction costs. This will provide more detail on the work that needs to be done, a better estimate of the total cost, and get us through the July 2023 bids for Euclid. And that's it.
So moved.
Moved by Fiorito,
Second.
second by Friedland.
Go ahead, Donna.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, could you please call roll?
No.
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 Friedland?
Yes.
Yes.
And Johnson, I vote yes also. Motion is denied.
I guess, yeah, what do we do now? I don't have, I need some direction then, because, I can't have the architects going and creating new designs without approval for some additional fees. I can bring Liz back in November, which I will do and I can maybe even bring her back earlier if we want to do a finance committee earlier.
I think, in my opinion, it would be best to bring her back in October.
Well,
I agree.
We
Yeah.
can try to do that and look again at the funding options.
If you could do early October, I think our next board meeting in October is the end of the month.
We have to call for either a finance committee meeting or a special meeting.
Yeah, we'd have to call for a finance, we can call for a finance committee meeting.
Or a committee of the whole. Yeah, we could do a
Yeah.
committee. Well, that'd be calling for a special meeting.
I agree.
Okay.
We could try to do that. But I can't ask them to proceed with anything without,
Of course.
Without being
Yeah,
able
no,
to pay them.
that's understood.
Correct.
For sure.
Do we still need to discuss the school maintenance grant?
No, I have to bring it back because what I had on that was our HVAC equipment. and
Okay.
We're not doing that. I need to find something else, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have suggestions for that grant.
Okay. NSSEO update, Mr. Ron said you are a representative.
Yes, so a couple things. Dr. Hackett officially announced her retirement end of this year. After 15 years of service, this will be her last year. Happy to report that NSSEO is nearly fully staffed, which is a huge accomplishment given the employment situation. But it's been a great cooperative process that went through with the union, and the administration has really busted their tail to hire a whole bunch of new people, and very excited about that. Still struggling a little bit with the one-to-one nurses, but we're talking about that. And then bingo night, the NSSEO Foundation on Wednesday, October 12th at the Arlington Ale House, 7 to 9 p.m. Put it on your calendar, come on out, be bingo and raffles, and great time, great way to support NSSEO and our community as a whole.
Thank you. Policy Committee, Mrs. Friedland, you are the chair.
Yeah, we have a slight update. that hopefully will make a huge impact. So we met on the 8th of this month to review our policy 660. Just to give some background, we had reviewed these back in January when the press update came out for all of the policy review. And when we were working on those in January, there was limited information on how the state planned to implement certain parts of the policy section 660. So when we approved them in February, there were still a number of unanswered questions from ISBE. There has been some update, but we are it's at the recommendation of the superintendent. And we discussed this at length in our policy meeting. Also from the policy committee, we are recommending and proposing that we amend the current policy that we have on the books to better align with the current instruction that we offer through District 26. And so if there are any updates regarding that, going forward, as more information trickles in again from the state, we'll keep you posted on that. But that is our plan. And then can I address one more thing?
Please do.
So this policy has to do with the national sex education standards. And at our last meeting, while I was not here due to illness, it is one thing to rip on a board member. I mean, like we're all volunteers. We dedicate our time. We do the best that we can. I've made a lot of mistakes while on this board. I am human. I do not do this for a living, but I try my best to be an involved citizen and to be, to better understand our school system. I am not perfect. I mean, this is clearly one situation where we all thought we understood what we were doing. And, in an attempt to be transparent with the public, we ended up getting ourselves into a place.
A list.
Right, onto a list that doesn't even represent what we offer as curriculum. But to have someone from outside of our district, a person who doesn't live in our district, a person who doesn't represent the people of our district, to come in and insult our employees, insult some of the best teachers that I've ever met, pretty much make fun of our children who are growing and learning and living in this community. I like it. I'm sorry, to get emotional. It's just, that really bothered me, and I want our teachers and our families and all of the marginalized people that we serve and the ones that aren't marginalized, that we are a community who supports each other. We can have disagreements about policies, and there's a person in our audience right now who disagrees with it and did so respectfully. And those are the conversations that I want to have. And but to have somebody who doesn't even live in our neighborhood judge our neighborhood was just.
Without knowing all the facts.
Right, and over a policy that he clearly didn't understand and misrepresented. So I just wanted to take a moment to address that because it's probably good that I was on a Zoom meeting that night. So.
Well said.
Thank you.
Appreciate your efforts and your sentiments. Anything else for your policy update?
No, just that we are striking the information regarding the national sex education standards.
Fantastic. Okay, President's report. Upcoming events on the 22nd, Euclid Donuts with Grown-Ups at 7:30 in the morning. Also on the 22nd, that evening, the Indian Grove PTC is sponsoring Monet Night. On the September 26th, all buildings are closed. The 30th of September, RTMS is having Rec Night at 6:30. And also on October 5th, all buildings are closed. Our next meeting will be on 10/18, the Board of Education normal meeting here at RTMS at 7 p.m. And we might be having a special meeting depending on what Lyndall comes back with.
So if 10-11's already earmarked as tentative, can we
No.
go?
No.
It's booked?
It's not, there's too many conflicts on that date.
I'm here. Is this thing on? Okay, superintendent report. In my last couple of weekly updates, I encouraged everyone to log into Super Eval. Hopefully you did that and found it was a piece of cake. Couple of clicks. Okay, so if we could do that, I'm just kind of prepping you because the rubric is in there, basically what you're going to be evaluating me on. So I think it'd be nice for you to get eyes on that rubric and the different components that have made up that rubric. But I am starting to upload some evidence. That's a warehouse where I can put some of the evidence related to the different components of the rubric. And with the next month already being October, I would like to kind of do like a 100-day update, either October, November, depending on what the agenda looks like, and get some feedback from everyone. It's not quite a mid-year, but it's getting close to mid-year. So I would like to do kind of like that, like I said, that 100-day update, get any feedback from all of you related to the rubric, performance, things of that nature. Going on to the next topic, I did recently just get a request to attend dinner at Triple I with Nicholas. They invited to take us out to dinner as our dinner. So I know that we have plans, we made a reservation, but I didn't know how everyone felt about partnering with one of our partners and having dinner with them. So I wanted to ask thoughts on that.
I have no issue with it. No. It's not going to drive any decision. It certainly didn't drive any decision tonight.
No, and I've heard, for new superintendents, it's common to build those relationships with
Absolutely.
our partners. So that was part of the
It wouldn't
reason why
replace
they-
our board dinner. It would be in addition to.
It would replace because
Okay.
of the calendar.
Just wanna make sure everybody's
would
aware
get
of that.
Full, too full.
I will comment and say, no, the optics, the perception is bad. So I would not, if that's what's going to happen, then I will not attend the dinner.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
Any other comments, questions?
Kind of agree with Donna. Just on this, I understand
Where benefits to you and maybe just the one-on-one, that would be better. Just seem kind of very in public, not the best looking discussion, and then if things change, it looks even worse. So yeah, I think just on the surface, with all good intentions, perception and reality.
I'm going to have to agree with that. Like I said, I don't think it's going to change any direction, but just optics of it, not good, especially when we're talking about what we're talking about right now.
It's fair.
All right, thank you
Okay.
for your feedback. And then lastly, we have been absent from River Trails for board meetings for a couple of months. We've spent some time at Prairie Trails, so thought I would take the opportunity to ask, do you have a preference of environment?
Well, we used to go to all the schools, and I don't know if that's anything we want to revisit. We used to go, we would visit each school once during the year. And then
I was going to say, I think
Right, that
because we
was-
are live streaming now,
That does
that's an
change
added
everything.
complexity to traveling around so much.
Is the LRC technologically more complicated for them to set up? Does it just feel like
He's right there. You could ask him.
It's more of a time crunch, the way that,
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly more, just because we can leave some things in here, but we will make anything work that you guys decide.
And I'm not trying to be convinced, if it was like, doesn't matter exactly.
It adds a little time only, and, you know, because we can't get in there until the school day is over, and obviously need to get it cleaned up before the next school day begins.
We usually set up a separate projector screen than what's currently in there, whereas a lot of this equipment stays in this room. So,
But
it will require.
we can make anything work.
Yep.
I mean, personally, I think whatever's easiest for the staff. I mean, we've not outgrown this room. This has not been an issue coming here.
The only issue I have with this room is its location in the building. It's not real obvious for anybody who, you know, we've talked about having more, or trying to encourage the public to come to our board meetings, and it's, you know, way in the back, and I mean, at the very least, can we work on some signage or something to kind of,
No, better signage at the front door.
the back, I don't know, something, just,
Right.
I think that's an easier hurdle than,
Signage currently, if you don't like what I'm doing. I have a sign where it says board meeting, Board of Education meeting entered here in the front. You walk down the hall, you have an arrow pointing instructions, another arrow pointing instructions.
okay,
another
I guess
arrow
maybe the
pointing
issue is I've been coming in the back of the building.
We could do like the weddings, we can get ushers and just have a lot of people down.
okay, we're losing it. Let's stay on topic.
Well, I know there was always a lot of debate about, where to have the board meeting, so I figured I would ask since we've had a sample of both places. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, future topics. The board self-evaluation is scheduled for November 1st. Thank you for everybody for confirming that date, 7 to 9 at Prairie Trail School. And what is the final day for partial refund? It just says October. Patty?
I believe they've changed it now, it's October 2nd.
Okay, so if you have
Get it to me by end of September.
if you have any issues with your III conference schedule, please let Patty know as soon as possible so that we can still qualify for a partial refund. And we talked to Mrs. Pfisterer. She's going to be joining us at the conference as well. That's on her schedule, so it'll be great to have the whole board there as a whole. Any other items for future consideration? Okay, hearing none. This is our next opportunity for visitors' comments. Do you have anyone who'd like to make a comment to the board? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion in a second to go into closed session for the matters of personnel, students, leases, and litigation.
So moved.
Moved by Friedland, second by Camardo.
Camardo?
Yes.
Fiorito?
Yes.
Fiorito, I hear yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I did say-
Friedland?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
Ronstadt?
Yes.
I vote yes. Pfister?
Got it, yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll go into closed session. We we'll go from there. Okay, can I get a motion and a second to resume open session at 9:46?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes again.
Yep.
Wait, I'm in a different part. I gotta go back one. Do you want to save your action? No, cancel. It does, yeah, I know, but I went ahead one, so how do I get it back? See, I went to the adjournment
Can
instead
you
of,
pull it in the drop down?
this is the
You'll
adjournment,
first cancel.
okay?
Can you
Now
drop
do
it
that?
down?
To adjourn the
Oh,
meeting.
oh,
I
you're in
need to-
adjourn. Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Just
Go
hit
back.
arrow back, I guess. Get out. Just say okay. Just say okay. We're gonna leave.
Okay, okay.
Let me.
You know what? I'm just going to manually do it. Okay. Okay, go ahead. So who?
So it was
who made the
moved by
motion?
Janine, second by Frank Fiorito.
Glenn and Frank, okay. Camardo?
Yes.
Fiorito?
Yes.
Friedland?
Yes.
Johnson? Yes. Ronstadt?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
And Pfisterer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, board meeting recap. I just would like to make sure, Lyndall, do you have any questions on any direction you did or did not get from the board?
The next thing I'm doing is trying to put together a finance committee meeting, and that's Donna, Louis, and Becky.
I thought that was going to be a meeting of a whole.
Oh, we're going to do it in committee.
Well, no, I think when the,
It may actually be easier so that everybody's on the same.
Yeah, okay, we're doing committee of the whole.
Okay.
It'll be a special meeting anyway, right? So-
Right.
In October, or actually, I'm out of town the first week of October, so. We're presenting on Prairie Trail School at 384 LB Commons.
nice, good luck on that. That's great.
What's the title of your presentation? Oh, it's okay, you don't have to do it right now, I'm sorry, I don't mean it.
It was, I have it in here, it was one of the presentation. And I was just elected to be on the board of the local church,
Okay, board meeting, okay, so you've got direction. If you have any questions, obviously.
Yeah, so you want to look at the finances, which I tried to get something together, but it was a little harder than usual.
No doubt.
To do that part of it.
Board meeting recap. Becky, welcome. This is what you can expect. Pretty much.
Way to get into the fire right off the
So-
bat.
Do you have any questions? Not to put you on the spot, but how was your first meeting? Everything okay? You got any procedural questions or?
No procedural questions.
Okay.
That's Mrs.
I get Frank in my ears, so it's all good.
But thank you, I'm excited.
Good.
I appreciate the discussion tonight.
Okay, well, no further business to come before the board. I'll entertain a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting at 9:50 PM.
So moved.
Moved by Friedland, second by Grimpy.
Okay, roll call. Camardo?
Yes.
Fiorito?
Yes.
Friedland?
Yes.
Johnson votes yes. Rodstadt?
Yes.
Grimpy?
Yes.
And Pfisterer.
You got it, yes. Nice.
Okay, we're adjourned at 9:50.
And did everybody sign the budget?
Yes, I made sure.